Hi everyone and welcome back to Claddagh National School's Story Time, episode 2 today. Well, for Lá Éile Pádraig, I thought I might bring you a special tale from Ireland. In fact, it's not just a tale from Ireland, it's a tale from Galway. And it's not even just a tale from Galway, it's a tale from our very own Claddagh, where our school is. And this is a very, very famous tale from the Claddagh, and it's probably the reason that the name Claddagh is known all over the world. Wait till I see what I have here until I show you. Now, does anyone recognise that? Do you know what that's called? It's a Claddagh Ring. And you can see it's got two hands on either side of a heart and a crown on top. And it's named after the Claddagh, which is where our school is in Galway. So today, I'm going to tell you the story of the Claddagh Ring. And this story begins a long, long time ago, about 340 years ago or more. And it's a story about a fellow by the name of Richard Joyce. Now, Richard lived in Galway, and he was a silversmith. He made silver jewellery for lots and lots of different types of people around the city. And he was pretty good at his job too. He must have been doing all right, actually, our Richard, because what did he do? Only took off to go over to the New World, to the Americas, which were only newly discovered then at that stage. And he was going over on some business to the Caribbean, or the West Indies as they used to call them then. So, Richard left Galway, but before he did, he had to say goodbye to his girlfriend. Now, do you know where his girlfriend was from? She was from the Claddagh. She was a Claddagh woman. So he went across the river, across the West Bridge. There was only one bridge in Galway at the time. He went across the West Bridge and he walked down along the river all the way down to Claddagh, just near the mouth of the River Corrib, and he went up to her house and he said goodbye to her and he kissed her and he said, "Don't worry, I'll be back soon. Try not to cry too much, okay? Will you be okay without me?" And she said, "Yes, Richard, I think I'll be okay. Thanks very much. Okay, bye now. Okay." So off he went. He went over, back across the river, down to the docks in Galway, near where the Spanish Arch is nowadays, and he got in his ship and he took off for America. And everything was going perfectly fine for Richard on the ship for a little while. Now there was two things that was very, very dangerous about travelling by sea at that time. Number one was storms. And lots of ships went down in the storms back in those days, because ships were only made of wood and they were sailing ships and they couldn't deal with storms very well. The other thing that was a little bit dangerous if you were travelling by sea at that time, especially if you were going to the Caribbean. Does anyone know anything that the Caribbean is famous for? You might be thinking of coconuts? Sugarcane. Reggae music. Or maybe, just maybe, you've got the word pirates in your head. Oh, and if you do, you're dead right. Because Richard's ship was sailing across the ocean one day when another ship came up alongside them with the Jolly Roger flying from its mast. And all of a sudden, they were boarded by pirates. Their ship was captured and they were all taken prisoner. Richard was taken down below deck and thrown into a cage. So, not exactly the best start to the journey for our Richard, was it? Well, things got a little bit worse than that, because the pirates didn't take him off to lie on a beach and make cocktails on maybe the island of Jamaica. No, they took him back across the Atlantic into the Mediterranean and they made port in North Africa. They took Richard out of his cage, down beneath deck in the ship. They put chains on him, big heavy manacle chains on his wrists and his feet. And they dragged him through the town in North Africa and they brought him to the market. You might be thinking they were going to the market to get some fish or maybe, some bread or some fruit, like you might in a market nowadays. wasn't that kind of a market. This was a slave market. They were taking Richard to put him up for sale. And in those days, people could buy other people as slaves and make them do whatever they wanted. I'd say Richard probably felt a little bit nervous when he was put up for sale in the slave market. I don't know, did they put a price around his neck and maybe a little description, you know? Pale, thin Irish man, good price, will sell to anyone for anything. But Richard was a little bit glick, I think, maybe a little bit clever. Because when one rich-looking man came up to look at him, Richard noticed that the man had the most beautiful jewellery all over his fingers and around his neck, and the most intricate and beautiful earrings as well. And the man was looking up Richard up and down. He was going, I don't really know if this fellow's any good for anything. He's going to die of sunburn within a week if I put him out working on a farm or something. But Richard said to himself, I think this man is a jeweller. So he said to him, excuse me, sir. And the man said, yes, what do you want? And he said, I notice there now you have some very nice jewellery on you there, eh? I don't suppose you made it yourself, did you? And the man looked at him and he said, why, yes, I did. You have a very fine eye for jewellery, my friend. And Richard said, well, to be honest with you, I not only have a very fine eye for jewellery, I'm also a dab hand at making it, would you believe it? And the man went, really? You can make jewellery? And Richard went, if there's one thing Richard Joyce can do, it's make jewellery. I'm telling you, I'm the finest silversmith in all of Ireland. Now, that might not have been 100% true, I suppose, but you know, you like to upsell yourself a little bit when you're in a slave market, I suppose. So, the best silversmith in all of Ireland, says he. And the man looked at him and he said, really? The best in all of Ireland? He says, indeed, sir. And I tell you, if you buy me, you might have noticed they're selling me pretty cheap here today. If you buy me, and keep me out of the sun, because you can see the skin, it's not great in the sun. He says, if you buy me, I promise I'll be good for your business. Because I'll bring a certain, well, your jewellery's nice, but it doesn't have that Celtic flair that a man like myself might bring to it, you know. And the man looked at him and he said, I think you are a very convincing man, Mr. What did you say your name was? He goes, Joyce. Richard Joyce, at your service, sir. Literally, if you'll give the man there a few gold coins for me. And he says, I think we have a deal, Mr. Joyce. You will be my slave, and you will make me a lot of money with your Celtic flair. Richard said, mighty stuff. Would you just, would you tell your man there, the old pirate fella there, that you'll give him a few quid and take me with you? So he did, and away Richard went. Back to the man's house, where he had the business out the front as well, a nice jewellery shop, and he had a little workshop between the shop and the house. And Richard settled in there, and I'll tell you now, if you were put up for sale in a slave market in North Africa in the late 1600s, there's worse things that could happen you than being bought by a jeweller and put to work in a nice little jewellery workshop, making nice little jewellery for fancy pants noblemen and women. Now, so things weren't too bad for Richard, were they? And I mean, he looked out the window every day and the sun was shining. The sun was shining. Not like here, I'll tell you. Not like Galway. Oh no, Richard was looking out the window and he was going, hey, this is a nice old place. Loads of fresh fruit every single day. All the oranges you could dream of. And sure, now, a fella in Galway back in those days wouldn't be seeing too many fresh oranges, I'll tell you that. Or if he was paying a good bit of money for them. So, things were good. loads of vitamin D from the sun, loads of vitamin C from the oranges, nice little job, nice room upstairs in the house. Not too bad for a slave. Have you remembered where the catch is in Richard's story? Who had he left behind in Galway, telling her that he wouldn't be too long? Oh, that's right. Herself was still beyond in Claddagh, waiting for him. And Richard was a bit of a romantic, tell the truth. He really didn't want to forget about this girl that he had left behind him in Claddagh, because he was, I suppose you could say, he was in love with her, really, you know. And there was no way he was moving on, because that didn't seem right to him at all. And look, an Irishman is hardly going to move on and be happy when he could be quite happy being miserable at the same time. Do you know what I mean? So what he did was, he said to himself, I need something to make sure that I don't forget about my girl back in Claddagh. I'm going to make her a ring. So, after work every night, and in his own room in secret, he smuggled a few tools up to his room. He'd have the candle on, and he'd be working away with his tools on this special ring that represented everything he felt for this girl that he had left behind in Galway. This ring had 2 hands for friendship, because she was his best friend, and a lovely heart in the middle to represent all the love he had in his heart, and then a crown on top. And crowns, a long time ago, crowns used to represent loyalty. Loyalty means you never ever let somebody down. You are faithful to them to the end. So between friendship and love and loyalty, Richard was really saying to himself, I'll never ever ever forget this girl. But the years passed, and Richard had no hope of ever escaping and getting home. If he escaped, he'd be hunted down and probably hanged. So all he could do was look at this ring each night by candlelight and try to keep the memory of the girl he loved in Galway alive. But that's not the end of the story, because a funny thing happened. After 15 years of slavery, politics stepped in for our Richard. The King of Great Britain and Ireland, because Ireland was under British control at that time, but the King reached an agreement with the people who ruled North Africa at that time. I don't know what the deal was, but the most important part of it was that all of the King's subjects who were held in slavery in North Africa were to be freed. Now, can you imagine how Richard felt when he heard this news? I'd say he was a little bit excited. Do you think? Well, what Richard did was, as soon as he heard the news out at the market one day, he rushed back to the house. He ran in past his master, who was sitting there with his feet up, and the master was going, "Jeez, Richard's in an awful hurry today." He ran upstairs, he packed his bags, he ran back downstairs, and he was just about to run out the door when the master said, "Richard, where are you going?" And he stopped and he said, I'm very sorry, but did you not hear the news?" And the master said, "No, I have been inside all day. I have not heard the news." He says, Richard says, I'm getting too excited myself to tell the story right. Richard says, "I'm free. The king has reached an agreement that all of his subjects are to be freed in North Africa. I'm off home. I'm going back to Galway." Well, the master got a fair shock when he heard that, I'll tell you. He fell back in the couch and he went, No, I don't believe. What? He couldn't believe that he was going to lose his best jeweller and After 15 years working together, a good enough friend too. He was kind of fond of Richard. He didn't want to lose him at all, for business or friendship. So he thought as quick as he could while Richard was picking up his bags. And he said, "Stop! Richard, my friend, wait a minute." And Richard was up already, on his way out the door with the 2 bags, and he went, "Huh?" And the master said, "No, Richard, wait. I will make you an offer. If you stay with me, I will make you my partner in business. We will be equals. What do you think, my friend?" And Richard went, "Oh. Do you mean like 50-50 equal?" And the master said, 50-50, 100%. So Richard went, "No, I understand what you mean. Okay, gotcha. That sounds like a great deal." And he sat back and he put his 2 hands into his pockets and he was thinking, holy moly. All the sunshine I can get. Not like Galway. Oh, nothing like Galway. Lovely and sunny every day of the year. Loads of fresh fruit and lovely things, dates and oranges and all sorts of wonderful stuff, apricots even, all sorts of exciting exotic fruit. And his own partnership in a nice little jewellery business. Well, Richard was beginning to think, hello, I might stick around. Then he felt something in his pocket. Do you know what it was? It was the Claddagh Ring that he had made to remind himself of his love, of his friendship, and his loyalty to his one true love that he had left behind him in Claddagh. So he looked down at the ring and he thought for a minute and he shook his head and he said, "You are a very generous man, but I cannot accept your offer. I'm sorry. I have to go home to Galway. My woman is waiting for me in Claddagh. Well, I hope." And the master went, there is a woman involved. And he thought as quick as he could, because Richard was nearly on his way out the door again with the 2 bags in his paws. And he said, "Okay, one last chance here." He said, "Richard, my friend, if you stay with me, I will give you a partnership in my business, 50-50, 100% equal. And if you want a woman, you may marry my daughter." Well, that put a stop to Richard's gallop, I can tell you, because he was not going to run out the door without having a little thought about the jeweller's daughter. He'd been looking at her for quite a few years, you see, and I don't know now if you've ever seen Disney's Aladdin, either the cartoon or the new movie that came out last year. But the jeweller's daughter was something similar to Jasmine, except even more beautiful. So Richard was on his way out the door again, and he went, "My own partnership in the business, and I can marry your daughter." And he looked out the window, and herself was outside in the courtyard. I don't know what she was doing. Probably peeling an orange, I'm thinking. Plenty of oranges, remember? Sitting under a palm tree. And he looked out the window, and she caught his eye as he looked out, and she went, "Oh, hi, Richard. How are you today?" She's like, all eyelashes fluttering and big lips and going, Very smiley indeed with our Richard. So Richard went, "Oh, by Dad. My own partnership in a thriving jewellery business. More sunshine than any Galway man has ever got before. All the freedom in the world to enjoy loads of oranges. And the jeweller's daughter. Well, he was teetering on the edge of staying when he realised his hand was back in his pocket and he hadn't even thought about it. And what do you think was poking into his hand within in his pocket? The crown of loyalty on top of the Claddagh Ring, reminding his finger to remind his head and all the rest of him that he had to remain loyal to his woman back in Claddagh. So he took his hand out of his pockets. He looked at the master and he said, "I'm very sorry, but I have to go back to my woman in Claddagh." And he waved to herself out in the garden. She waved back to him. Poor old Richard. Loyalty is a terrible curse. So he took up his bags, he bid farewell to his master, and away he went. He would have hopped on a ship down to the docks there in North Africa, sailed probably to the south of Spain, and then grabbed a ride all the way up along the west coast of Spain and Portugal, and right all the way up past Cork and Kerry and Limerick and Clare, and then into Galway Bay. And as he sailed into Galway Bay, he could see the houses in the Claddagh and the smoke coming from the chimneys, and he began to think, oh, it's been 15 years. Japers, I hope she's been loyal to me. He was thinking, what if I land up at her door and she's there married to some other fella and a rake of kids or something? And he started to get very, 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 very nervous. So his heart was beating very, very fast indeed when he got off the ship below at the docks there in Galway, just beside where the Spanish Arch is now. And he made his way up along the river to the West Bridge, and across the West Bridge, his heart beating faster and faster and harder and harder. And then he began to run as he was heading down the other side of the Corrib, down the west bank of the River Corrib. And he went down below into Claddagh, up Fair Hill, and he stopped at her door and he went, and he put his hand in his pocket and he took out the ring and he said, "Here goes." And he reached up and who do you think opened the door? Only herself, his one true love. And her face lit up with a beautiful smile when she saw him. And Richard didn't waste any time this time. He dropped straight down on his knee and he looked up at her and he said, "I'm back. Will you marry me?" And she looked down at him and she started crying. And she took his hands and she took the ring and she said yes. And she took the world's very, very first Claddagh ring and placed it on her finger. And thus began, my friends, the legend that is the Claddagh Ring. Well, thank you all very, very much for listening to that. I really hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back again soon with more stories or tales. And Banachtaí na Féile Pádraig ar I Gléir. I hope you all had a wonderful St. Patrick's Day with your families, wherever you are. Slán go fóill. Bye bye.